Learning tracks have changed the way we learn choral music, and they're a valuable resource, but there are some pitfalls. Stay tuned to find out how to use them in the very best way. With me today is Matt Curtis, an amazing singer, a savvy businessman, and the CEO of ChoralTracks.com, who have produced over 35,000 learning tracks for over 35,000 choral pieces. And remember, if you enjoy this video, please like it. And also, if you want to be notified of additional videos when they post, you can subscribe and click on the bell icon. Matt, thank you so much for being with us today.
Awesome, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about Choral Tracks. I remember you and I were at an ACDA conference, like on booths right next to each other many years ago. And we were talking about learning tracks, and you said to me at the time that you don't want to just be the one vendor of learning tracks, you want to do all of them. And I thought that was incredibly quite ambitious and maybe a little bit crazy, and yet here we are with 35,000 learning tracks in your library. So how have things been going with Choral Tracks? How did you get here?
Things are great. I mean, I got started just doing everything on my own, recording all the parts, soprano, alto, tenor, bass, so singing up in a high countertenor kind of a voice. Which was interesting because that's not quite as natural to me. I'm a tenor as a singer, so it took a little bit of time to get that into my voice. But yeah, I just started super lean. I was working a full-time job out in San Francisco while I was kind of building the company, and then I was doing some freelance singing, and it just kind of grew organically, bigger and bigger and bigger, and a kind of really big breakthrough moment. It feels kind of weird to say since I have so many friends who were devastated by COVID in the performing space.
Right.
But 2020 was a huge year for us. Obviously, choirs were still getting together, high school, middle school choirs especially, trying to figure out the whole virtual thing, connecting on Zoom, and virtual digital products like ours kind of helped get them through it. And now that COVID is mostly past and behind us, choirs, our customers are still loving the product. It wasn't just a temporary thing. So
right.
I started from a place where it was just me kind of doing everything, and now we have 15 employees who are recording and audio mixing and producing and all those fun different things.
Yeah, it's truly an amazing story. And also, I guess you guys are beneficiaries of COVID in a way, but oftentimes when things change and people adapt their behavior and they learn better ways to do things, and maybe they don't go back to the old way, right?
Yeah, I mean, ever since I've been building this business, I kind of have had a more macro vision of where could this grow in the next 3 years, and then 5 years, and 10 years, right? And so, kind of where we are today, I think what happened with COVID is that it basically took my vision of where we were going into the future and kind of pulled it ahead maybe a few years, something like that.
Right.
So I kind of always envisioned that we would be in this place, and thankfully for us, COVID was able to kind of bring that forward.
Right. So let's talk about your customers a little bit. Who are the people who mostly use learning tracks from Choral Tracks? And well, there's a lot of different kinds of choirs in the world, so who are your best customers?
Yeah, definitely our core customer are high schools and middle schools in the United States. We also have lots of really great community choirs as well. We have some church choirs, kind of a limited number in that space. Yeah, our target customer is certainly high schools, middle schools in the United States, universities as well, university choir programs. We don't have a whole lot of exposure quite yet in Europe and other markets outside of the United States. That's something that we need to, a challenge for us to kind of grow into those markets a little bit more. But it's really great working kind of primarily in the music education space there, middle school, high school, university.
Right, so that's the core of your business. I guess if you wanted to get into Europe, you would have to deal with language in a different way, right? Even though I imagine you've already got people singing in different languages for the U.S. market.
Yeah, we're good with with German and Italian and French and Spanish and in Latin, and those kind of core languages that every good professional singer who has gone to college for music has to learn. We're good with those languages, but yeah, some of the other languages, Scandinavian languages, I personally have some experience in those languages, but I'm by no means an expert at all. So whenever I get a piece in a different language kind of outside those core languages, I always have to refer to a dictionary and recordings on YouTube and all those different.
Oh, sure. That must slow things down. So it's very global in nature. Let's talk about learning tracks kind of in general. So, of course, over the last 10 or 15 years, I think learning tracks have changed the way that lots of people learn music and probably affected who can be in a certain kind of group and how much time it takes and what do you do in rehearsal and probably changes things away from traditional methods in some ways. Why don't you talk about that? What are your customers doing differently now compared to the way they did things in 15 years ago?
Yeah, well, okay, so first of all, one thing that I learned rather quickly that I kind of knew but didn't fully understand is that the concept of rehearsal tracks and part predominant tracks has been around for quite a long time. Most teachers who I've spoken to, probably pretty much every teacher out there at some point has had the horrible struggle process of creating their own tracks for their choir, whether it's just for one song, maybe that's extra difficult, or for all of their songs that they do. And every music educator who I've talked to about that just loathes that just hates that process of creating their own tracks. So when I got started, it was very much kind of a niche market that was very much in the shadows, if you will. Saying in the shadows just meaning that choral directors were creating their own tracks. There wasn't kind of one central way of using them. So it's always been my challenge to bring that kind of niche product, that niche market, into the mainstream. So that's one piece of information that kind of really surprised me when I first got started. And then the overall concept of how do you fit the usage of rehearsal tracks, choral tracks into your overall program, right? How does it coincide with just music notation literacy overall? Obviously, you, as a choral director, ideally want your students to be able to visually have the tools to see sheet music and understand all of the symbols, key signatures, solfege, all of those really great, fantastic things. And I've gained a lot of different information about how different customers use rehearsal tracks and how to create some kind of a balance for their own program. So it's not just send your kids, listen to all the music, don't worry about visually notation, learning all of those different great things. Certainly the extremes on both sides perhaps aren't the best way of integrating rehearsal tracks.
Right. So it lowers the barrier a little bit, but maybe it also makes it easier to not learn how to read music as quickly as you would have otherwise.
Yeah, and as a professional singer, I think I have a unique perspective in the space. I went to college and had a music education degree, but music education, being a choral director, that kind of institutional learning and then institutional teaching has never been my forte. I've always been a professional singer, right? And I've sung in like every possible choral scenario, it seems, every possible different type of choir out there. And so I kind of have that unique perspective of being that person in the choir, right? Not that person who went through all the institutions and now works for the institutions. Mm-hmm. And so I appreciate the concept of learning by ear a lot. In my experience, that is something that singers who I've sung with rehearsal tracks have worked really, really well. I also am very proficient at sight reading and all of those different literacy tools as well. So
well, you'd have to be to do the business that you do, right? You're literally translating sheet music into audio for a living. So, absolutely. Yeah. Let's ask a question of the audience. So, do you use learning tracks in your ensemble? Why don't you write the name of your ensemble down below and say whether you do or don't, and then why or why not? So what do you think is the healthiest way then for your core customers to use learning tracks? What are the kind of best practices that get the best results for students and for ensembles?
Yeah, so I describe my product, Choral Tracks, as kind of that strong section leader, singer, who's next to, in the middle of the tenor section, let's say, or whatever section where perhaps a less experienced singer can sit next to them or sit close to them and kind of lean in and really kind of learn all aspects of singing and style and language from that really rock solid singer in the sections. That's kind of how I model my tracks. And so I think that one of the biggest challenges that I have wanted to solve is that in almost all of my rehearsal experiences that I've been in since singing in different choirs, the majority of rehearsal time is you get together, you do a little 5-10 minute warm up, maybe you do some solfege in there just to keep solfege fresh in the warm ups. But then the entire rehearsal is someone sitting at the piano and just pounding the notes and feeding it to singers, and you have very little time to actually work on the artistry of things. How do we, as a choir, match our vowels, vocal pedagogy, healthy singing, balance and style, and all of those great aspects of artistry that I personally put a lot more kind of value into those experiences versus coming to a rehearsal and just pounding the notes the entire time. So I guess my biggest mission with Choral Tracks is to give choral directors and singers that really effective tool outside of rehearsal to practice their parts and learn their notes, so that singers can show up to rehearsal much more prepared, and then choir directors can work on much more aspects of artistry and literacy and things like that. Some choirs who are customers of ours only use tracks maybe for part of their program, and some music they don't use tracks for. So that's a good way of kind of balancing. Having learning tracks gives choir directors the opportunity to program music that's perhaps a little bit more challenging for their singers that they wouldn't otherwise program. So that's kind of another unique perk of using rehearsal tracks. So yeah, I think every choir is different, and every choir director kind of needs to find their own balance of how do choral tracks fit into their program.
Well, let's talk about technology in general a little bit. Obviously, a person from 1960 or even 1980 would be shocked at the amount of technology we have to use, learning tracks included. Where do you think that is all going? What can we look forward to in 2040 in terms of technology and how it impacts the choral world?
Yeah, by 2040, interesting. That's a long time into the future.
I was kidding. I meant 2030. 2030.
2030. Well, yeah. Or 2030. Still a lot can happen there too. Yeah, I think for me, I still now today sing in a barbershop quartet. I show up at the local barbershop chorus every once in a while, sing in a community choir here, kind of based in one of the universities. And the reason why I love singing in choir, I'm probably the ultimate choir nerd, is just the social experience, right? Obviously, I've had some professional experiences that have kind of fed me kind of the elite artistic experience. But now that I'm back in Wisconsin and performing in community choirs, it's all about just the social experience, being there face to face with people, the camaraderie afterwards. If you sing a barbershop chorus, of go to the bar after.
Yeah, definitely getting a beer after that.
Yeah, a couple of beers after that. That's why I love and enjoy choir now at this stage in my life. And so, obviously, in an increasingly digital world, I don't think that's going to change very much. I think choirs are still going to be getting together in person, hopefully until the end of time, if you will. But I think that what we've learned in the past couple of years with COVID, and now with the emergence of Zoom and some lower latency technology, is that I definitely see in the future some kind of a digital platform, call it a digital community, where you could potentially get together like we are in real time, zero latency, and make music together.
Right.
maybe in the metaverse, someone could build a room that looks like Carnegie Hall.
Right, yeah.
Perhaps you could pay, $20 or something to the Carnegie Hall NFT, right, non-fungible token, where you can put yourself into Carnegie Hall with three other singers and sing from a list of songs, maybe Bird Ave Verum Corpus, let's say. I think digital products like a Carnegie Hall NFT or Ave Verum Corpus sheet music or Choral Tracks to help facilitate the learning of those parts can help facilitate that kind of a digital choir in the metaverse, if you will. I definitely think that someday soon, probably, there will be the opportunity to make music together from anywhere in the world with complete strangers and have just a grand old time.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. As Carnegie Hall is getting a lot of play today, but as it turns out, I'm going to be singing with my younger child, who is going to be 17 then, with the Vancouver Youth Choir in Carnegie Hall, like at the end of April. So
that's awesome.
Should be really fun. And I've only been to New York one other time, and it was also to sing in Carnegie Hall, but with my barbershop chorus when I was like 19 years old. So I heard it changed a little bit in the interim, but yeah, it's going to be fun. So where can people go to learn more about Choral Tracks and to look at that massive library you guys have accumulated?
So you can go to our website, ChoralTracks.com. We're on all the social media platforms as well, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all of those different platforms. Come find us. We have our product in a couple other retail stores as well. You've probably seen our product in JW Pepper and other stores like that. If you have any questions about what we do, if you need tracks for a piece that you can't find in our catalog, we have 15 employees and we crank out tons of volume of music all the time. So come find us and let us know.
That is fantastic. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
And thank you for watching. And if you enjoyed today's show, please hit the like button. Again, we do an episode every week, and you can subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified about that. My name's Tom Metzger, and I hope your day is full of singing.